I actually joined the Army with the intent of being an airborne ranger. Unfortunately, at the time, they had a program called 11 X-ray. 11 X-ray meant that you were an infantry man, but they chose your specific specialty when you went to basic training. And so when I went with an airborne ranger contract, which is known as an option 40 contract. And they made me an 11 hotel, which is a heavy weapons anti-armor, which means basically you're an infantryman that gets to drive around in a Humvee and shoot at tanks. And I actually thought that was pretty squared away. I actually thought it was a good job. And so there was no beef in basic training or AIT, except at the end of advanced individual training, the ranger instructors came and said, where are my guys at? And I remember thinking to myself, like, I'm right here. But they didn't come to our platoon, and our platoon was full of 11 hotels. And I remember asking the drill sergeant, like, what's going on? I had a ranger contract. I was supposed to go to a ranger induction program. And they said, there's no 11 hotels in Ranger Regiment. So I was still an infantryman, and I had plans to go to 25th Infantry Division in Fort Lewis, Washington. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go to a Ranger Regiment. They basically shipped me off to Fort Myer, Virginia, where I started my career before 9/11 in the infantry and the old guard. My first original ETS get out of the Army date was September 9th, 2001. And so when I got out of the military, I transferred into the National Guard. And I was in Fayetteville Technical Community College, going to school, collecting my GI Bill. And 2 days later, after I got out of the military, 9/11 happened. And I remember picking up the phone and calling my chain of command in that unit and saying, hey, like, what are we doing? Like, let me know, because I'm ready. Realizing that nothing was going to happen in that unit. I had to get back in to serve, because if I didn't, I would miss my opportunity to actually fulfill the dream that I dreamt about as a child, which is serving the country. I joined the Army the next day, signed my paperwork, and I went back in basically as an 18 X-ray, as a guy straight off the streets with some experience, and went through selection a couple months later. When I came out, I actually served in 3rd Special Forces Group and went straight to war. 2 weeks after I graduated the qualification course, I deployed to Afghanistan. My company was involved in Operation Red Wings. I was there on the ground as QRF for all that stuff. And a defining moment in my career in Special Operations, because I realized all the things that I wanted to accomplish. You know, Special Operations lays it all out for you. You can do as much as you want to do, just like the Army motto of be all you can be. So I wanted to do everything I could. I went to, Special Forces Sniper School. I went to Special Forces CQB School, known as SFARTEC. I went to Halo School. I went to Jump Master. All these schools to set me up to be in Special Operations in different positions. One of the things that I'm proud of in my career is I was a member of the Commanders and Extremist Force. They're basically the first response in a crisis on the continent or geographical region that they occupy. I started off as an assaulter in the Commanders and Extremist Force, was a breacher, was a sniper team sergeant, and quickly evolved and grew in that company and those units. A lot of my career was spent with the Iraq Counter-Terrorism Force, or the ICTF, training with them and doing combat operations with them in Iraq. And so when I actually got out in 2013, and I transitioned into the National Guard, into 19th Special Forces Group, where I served as an operations sergeant major, and then did government contracting. And so I did that for a couple of years while I worked part-time for the military as a sergeant major in special operations. I had been to every survival school in the military, really every single special operations survival school, which is many, and realized that for me was a passion, but also was a niche that wasn't available for consumers. There wasn't a lot of things in survival that people were teaching or that people were aware of. The survival industry is known as a bushcraft industry, but I thought of something that was different in the fact that if you were in a car accident and you made it through that situation, you had a death in the family and you made it through that situation, or you're through a catastrophe, natural, man-made, and you survived, there was something there to be analyzed, to be talked about, part of a life experience that could apply and maybe help somebody else. Those small glimpses of experiences I had experienced in special operations again and again and again, day after day or night after night. All the training, all the equipment that facilitated all this stuff that I was doing was modern survival. and that those small lessons learned that were small and impactful to us in special operations could be vastly large and broader in the civilian sector. When I started Fieldcraft, I had a vision, and the vision was a brand that's associated with preparedness, a new way of looking at equipment, a new way of looking at training. I want it to encompass everyday carry, everyday mobility, but means something substantial to people in their everyday lives. I want Fieldcraft to be a brand on its own. I want it to stand for something. I want to make this cool and comfortable. If there's an urbanite, he could be a liberal urbanite in the middle of San Francisco, has no interest in guns and tactical space and anything in my field. If I can convince that guy to come out of his apartment and to realize that being prepared isn't prepping, but is associated with a mindset of preparedness, then we succeeded. I remember specifically seeing Charlie Sheen fall out of the ceiling doing an hostage rescue, and he had an MP5. And I thought, man, that job right there is what I wanted to do. And I actually remember driving with my dad. I must have been 9, 10 years old. Because I remember I was enthralled with guns and the culture and, serving. And I made him a bet that if I became a special operations guy, he would buy me MP5 SD. And it's something that he still owes me, obviously, an MP5 SD. He never followed through.